The truth is that if you aren't where you want to be financially, then I'd be willing to guess that there are knowledge gaps that are holding you back from living your best financial life. You see, you can't employ money management techniques you don't know, which is why the rich tend to focus a lot of their attention on raising their financial IQ. Lucky for you, boss, in this video I will go over 5 tips that will significantly improve your financial situation. And if you're new to the channel, then hit the subscribe button below for more life-changing content. Tip number 1. Leverage compound interest. If you've ever heard of Albert Einstein, then you will know that he was a pretty smart dude, and is famously quoted as saying, "Compound interest is the 8th wonder of the world. He who understands it earns it. He who doesn't pays it." And I think it's fair to say that any financial principle that comes this highly touted should be put to good use. If you aren't familiar with compound interest, it's the accumulation of interest on any principal amount invested over time. While this doesn't sound very magical by its description, the leveraging of compound interest can make your wealth exponentially increase as the rate of return continues to be applied to larger and larger balances over time. Let's use an example to illustrate just how powerful this financial principle really is. If you deposited $5,000 into an investment account that yielded a 5% return and compounded once annually, after the first year, you would end up with $5,250. Now, in the second year, the 5% return would be applied to the new balance of $5,250, making money grow a little bit more in the second year to $5,512.50. This calculation assumes that you won't be taking out any money from this investment, but as you can see, as you allow the interest to continue to be applied to your untouched principal, it can grow quite quickly. In fact, in just 10 years, your original $5,000 investment would have grown to $8,144.47 without ever having contributed another penny to it since you first started. This is why you often hear me preach that you need to start investing as early as possible, because the true force behind this financial principle is the power of time. Every year, the interest compounds, allowing your wealth to grow that much more. This is why I like to share the story of my friends Justin and Ryan. Justin began investing at age 19 and put $2,000 into a 12% interest-bearing investment vehicle every year until age 26, for a total of 8 contributions. Now, Ryan put off investing until he was 27 years old, then contributed $2,000 into a 12% interest-bearing investment vehicle every year until age 65, for a total of 39 contributions. Well, you would think that Ryan would have ended up with more money since he invested many more contributions than Justin. The sheer power of time on compounding growth will actually allow Justin to out-earn Ryan by more than $700,000, with a total fund worth $2,288,996 versus Ryan's $1,532,166 by the time they both turn 65. Therefore, if you want to transform your financial life for the better, then you must start leveraging compound interest now. Tip number 2, build multiple streams of income. So you just graduated college and are now starting to earn your first real paychecks and are feeling richer than you've ever felt before. That's great, but as a majority of people come to realize pretty quick, that money goes out much faster than it comes in. That's because when you get paid, you then need to pay your taxes, contribute to your 401k, make payments on your student loans, pay rent, fill your fridge with groceries, and make sure to at least pay the minimum balance on your credit card. While you envision being able to enjoy that money your employer handed you, the reality is that after expenses, it can be easy to have nothing left to show for all of your hard work. But wait, you still haven't put money aside for a future vacation, your child's education, or any other worthwhile causes. You see, unfortunately, we are sold the idea that if you go to college and get a good job, you will not have to worry about money for as long as you live. However, this is very far from the truth. Across the board, salaries are growing at a much slower rate than the cost of living, which means that every year, unless you get a big raise or promotion, your salary will actually have less buying power than the year before. Your income, after it is netted against inflation, is known as real income, and many studies show that in the United States, real income, or the buying power after inflation, has barely risen since 1978. Besides the cost of nearly everything going up, the general population is becoming more and more consumer-centric. We keep finding new things we didn't even know we needed, and every year we find ourselves outspending our prior self in an effort to keep up with those around us who are falling into the same financial trap. So how do we combat this financial struggle? My recommendation is to start building other sources of income. For the typical person, their one and only source of income is their 9-to-5 job, and the reality is that for most people this won't give them the amount of income they need to prosper financially, and the statistics back this up. 78% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck, which means that they have little money to put towards their financial futures, further supporting the point that having multiple sources of income is important. This income could come in the form of a part-time job, freelance work, building a side business, or anything else that can earn you a steady second income. Going one step further, you can then live off your primary income and bank your second income, which is known as the 2-income savings technique. Then, you can start to build a solid financial base and see your wealth grow over time. Tip number 3, plan for emergencies. Doesn't it feel like every time you put some money aside, your car breaks down, your washer breaks, or the air conditioning on your car stops working? While you should keep a positive mindset in your day-to-day life, the reality is that emergencies happen, and the best way to handle them is to be prepared in advance. I remember when my uncle fell ill and I had to fly out to see him with very little notice, and having money stashed away allowed me to focus on him and not the stress of the financial cost of the situation. Now, not every situation will be this dire, but having money set aside for a rainy day is important nonetheless. Many financial gurus will recommend you save up 3 to 6 months worth of living expenses in your emergency fund, but my advice is to put aside a year's worth if you can. Having a bit more money put aside gives you extra peace of mind. It can be leveraged in cases where you need to take off an extended period of time for work or have to deal with multiple emergencies at the same time. Now, if you don't know where to start when it comes to building an emergency fund, let me walk you through the 2-step process I personally used many years ago. First, take out a piece of paper and write down all of your monthly expenses. This should include things like rent or mortgage payments, your grocery costs, utilities, car payments, etc. While it's easy to list out your most obvious expenses, make sure you don't miss any hidden costs like recurring insurance payments, investment contributions, or monthly subscriptions. Once you have your total monthly costs calculated, multiply it by 12 to get the total amount you will want to have in your emergency fund. Once you have this figure, it's time to move on to step number 2. In step number 2, you will set up a system to begin saving up to this total amount. What I recommend is that you open up a bank account specifically for your emergency fund, and then set up a 10% automatic deduction from your pay with your employer that will send a portion of your paycheck into that emergency savings account every month. By automating this process, you can be sure that your fund will continue to grow to your target amount, and once complete, you can reroute that automatic deduction into other accounts like your 401k or a mutual fund. Tip number 4, avoid lifestyle inflation. If you didn't know any better, you would probably assume that the people around you are rich, as it's become so common to see people constantly spending their money on new clothes, cars, and electronics. The truth, however, is that most people are spending much more than they actually have. While social media and the comparison culture it fosters contributes to this behavior, another factor at play is lifestyle creep. Lifestyle creep is defined as the act of increasing your standard of living in order to match your increased income, and this phenomenon is destroying the wealth building potential of many individuals. You see, for the average person, when they begin to make more money, their level of spending rises accordingly. For instance, you may be fine with driving around in your $20,000 sedan when you're struggling to pay your bills, but once you get a big promotion or your business takes off, you may find yourself wanting to splurge on that fancy $100,000 sports car. And this is one of the big differentiators between the rich and the poor. When the rich make more money, they forgo the desire to spend the money today and instead sock it away into savings and investments that grow in value and provide financial resources that can be used in the future to maintain their current standard of living. In financial terms, delaying gratification is known as delayed discounting, and it takes place when someone decides to discount the value of future rewards to immediately gratify themselves, even though accepting a lesser reward isn't exactly rational. The rich know that future payoffs will be greater than present rewards, and studies strongly support how this restraint from present gratification can lead to larger income realizations in the future. In a study of over 2,500 people, participants were asked whether they would hypothetically accept a smaller sum of money, $500 USD, or a larger sum, $1,000 USD, after a delay, which could be 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, 6 months, or 1 year. When the researchers used machine learning algorithms to model the relationship between individuals' tendency for delay discounting and other self-reported variables, they found that delay discounting was more predictive of income than age, ethnicity, race, and height. Therefore, if you want to say goodbye to your money worries, then make sure you avoid lifestyle inflation at all costs. Tip number 5, manage financial stress. We all know that stress can be harmful to not only our physical, but mental health as well, and one of the main causes of stress relates to our finances. Compare these two situations and ask yourself, which of these two individuals will be more stressed out due to their financial situation? Person 1, who makes minimum wage and can barely cover their bills, or person 2, who has multiple streams of income, has their house paid off, and has a fully funded retirement account? I think the answer is pretty obvious. And when you can establish a solid financial position, you can start to see your financial stress dissipate. So what can you do to avoid this type of financial turmoil? Reducing debt, having adequate insurance, and automating your finances are all ways to reduce the mental bandwidth money will have in your mind, and will allow you to focus on more important things like family, friends, and your health. Thanks for watching. If you want to go from the life you have to the life you deserve, then hit the subscribe button now.